The bread hits the frozen ground and explodes into fragments like shrapnel. Corporal Dmitry Sokolov stares at the shattered pieces, 125 grams, the thin line between living another day and joining the 3,000 corpses that line Leningrad's streets this morning. His hands won't close anymore. The cold has turned his fingers into useless claws, wrapped in torn curtain fabric because the Red Army ran out of gloves 2 months ago. Behind him, a woman is eating wallpaper paste mixed with sawdust. Across the street, a child's body lies frozen in the exact position of reaching for his mother. This is day 61 of the siege. This is what happens when an entire city becomes a tomb for the living. And the German artillery barrage that suddenly screams overhead means it's about to get worse. The 150mm shells impact 3 blocks east, turning a former school into an eruption of flames that somehow burn despite the snow, despite the ice, despite the fact that nothing in this frozen hell should be able to sustain fire. Sokolov moves before his brain can process the command. Pure animal instinct, overriding a body that's eating itself from the inside. His Mosin Nagant rifle, wrapped in the same curtain scraps as his hands, becomes an extension of survival as he runs toward the Never River, toward the supply route across the ice they call the Road of Life, though death travels it far more often than anything resembling salvation. Private Volkov materializes from a doorway like a ghost, which is what they all are now, specters pretending to be soldiers. He's supporting an old woman who weighs maybe 30 kilos, though the photograph clutched in her skeletal fingers shows she was easily twice that before the Germans surrounded the city and decided to starve 2 million people as a military strategy. The woman's eyes have that hollow look Sokolov recognizes instantly. She's already seeing the other side, already negotiating with whatever comes after. Volkov's gesture is desperate, urgent. She needs to reach the evacuation trucks on the frozen lake before her body completes its final surrender. Then the sound arrives that turns blood to ice water. The Stuka dive bomber's siren, that demonic shriek the Germans engineered specifically to weaponize terror, to transform human courage into liquid panic. The Luftwaffe has found the road of life again. They run anyway, because the alternative to running is choosing the exact spot where you'll freeze to death, and some primal part of Sokolov's brain refuses to make that choice while his heart still beats. The street is a gallery of the dead. Bodies everywhere, soldiers still gripping rifles, civilians collapsed mid-step, a mother and child frozen in an embrace that will last until spring thaw. Sokolov stopped seeing them as people weeks ago. They're landmarks now, navigation markers in a city that's become one massive tomb. Turn left at the frozen family, go straight past the woman clutching the empty pot. Navigate by corpses because the street signs are buried under snow and ash and the pulverized remains of what used to be civilization. The Stuka's bomb hits the apartment block ahead with the sound like the world splitting open. The entire 6-story structure collapses inward, folding like a house of cards built by a god who decided humanity was a mistake worth correcting. The shockwave picks Sokolov up and hurls him backward into a snowbank that's equal parts snow, ash, and the atomized remains of the city itself. His ears scream with high-pitched ringing that drowns everything except the thunder of his own heartbeat trying to escape his chest. When vision returns, through the dust and smoke, Volkov is on the ground with the old woman still locked in his arms, both of them covered in brick powder that makes them look like the ghosts they're becoming. The route to the lake is blocked, tons of collapsed masonry sealing what was their only direct path to survival. Sokolov's combat brain does the calculation in microseconds. They have to go through the Kirov factory district, through the active front line where German and Soviet positions face each other across less than 400 meters of frozen hell. It's insanity, it's suicide, it's the only option that isn't guaranteed death. The factory complex rises ahead like the skeleton of some industrial leviathan that died screaming. Months of artillery have transformed it from the pride of Soviet manufacturing into a vertical maze where gravity and geometry have lost all meaning. Walls exist in pieces. Floors hang at impossible angles. Metal machinery lies scattered like the discarded toys of titans who got bored with creation and moved on to destruction. Sokolov leads them through a blast hole into what used to be the main assembly floor, a space so vast it has its own weather system of smoke and falling snow that filters through the shattered roof. Twisted lathes lie like fallen soldiers. Industrial presses have been crushed by forces greater than they were built to withstand. Everything is metal and ice, and the particular silence that comes from places where humans recently died violently. Then he hears it. Not the sound of something, but the sound of nothing, that complete absence of noise that means human beings are holding their breath, muscles locked, waiting in ambush. Sokolov's fist shoots up. Everyone freezes into instant statues. His eyes scan the mechanical graveyard, looking for the shadow that's slightly wrong, the reflection that shouldn't exist, the tiny detail that separates survival from a bullet in the brain. The German patrol reveals itself through the most human of failures. Someone coughs. The sound echoes through the dead factory like a gunshot, announcing position and presence. 6 shapes materialize from between the machinery. German soldiers as skeletal as the Russians, uniforms equally tattered, faces carved by the same hunger that's killing both sides with democratic cruelty. The German sergeant spots them in the same frozen instant. 12 men, 2 nations, weapons rising in synchronized movement toward mutual annihilation. But nobody fires, nobody even breathes. Because shooting means death for everyone. The sound will summon artillery from both sides, will bring reinforcements, will transform this factory into a kill box where the only survivors will be the rats that have grown obscenely fat on human flesh. The German sergeant's eyes lock onto Sokolov's across 15 meters of space that might as well be 15 kilometers or 15 millimeters. Distance has ceased to matter in a place where death exists everywhere simultaneously. 2 soldiers, 2 enemies, 1 shared calculation. Some ammunition costs more than the targets are worth. Sokolov lowers his Mosin Nagant 1 centimeter, not surrender, not peace, just acknowledgement of arithmetic. The German mirrors the movement with his Mauser. They back away from each other with the careful precision of animals sharing a watering hole in drought territory, maintaining eye contact until the darkness between the machines swallows both groups. It's not mercy, it's not even humanity. It's just the cold mathematics of survival in a place where bullets matter more than ideology. They emerge on the factory's northern edge, where the ruins meet the open street, and that's when the second nightmare arrives with the diesel roar of German supply trucks, an entire mechanized column rolling past, heading toward the frontline trenches with ammunition, rations, medical supplies, all the things Leningrad hasn't seen since autumn. Sokolov's starving brain screams at him to attack, to take those supplies, to do anything except watch enemy resources pass by. But his combat instincts know better. 3 Soviet soldiers and a dying old woman against a mechanized column equals nothing except interesting ways to die quickly.
Then the universe provides what desperation cannot. The lead truck hits a Soviet mine. The explosion doesn't just destroy the vehicle, it annihilates it, flipping 3 tons of metal and cargo into the air like a child's toy. The blast wave shatters windows that were already broken, throws shrapnel through the air in a horizontal rain of instant death. The German column judders to a confused halt, soldiers dismounting in panic, NCOs screaming orders that get lost in the chaos of burning diesel and detonating ammunition. And in that moment of perfect disorder, Sokolov sees it. The mine blast has torn open supply crates on the second truck. Wooden boxes split apart, contents spilling across frozen pavement. Rations, medical supplies, blankets. All the currency of survival in a siege economy where human life has been devalued to less than the packaging. He doesn't think. Thinking is a luxury for people who have time. He moves, low and predatory, using the burning wreckage as cover, Volkov instantly reading his intention and following, the old woman somehow finding reserves of strength that shouldn't exist in a body consuming itself. They reach the truck in heartbeats, hands grabbing everything they can touch, tins of meat that feel impossibly heavy with substance, packages wrapped in wax paper, a first aid kit with actual bandages instead of just torn newspaper. A German soldier materializes beside the truck, young enough that he should still be in school, terrified enough that his Mauser rifle shakes as it swings toward Sokolov's chest. Time crystallizes into something sharp and fragile. The German's finger whitens on the trigger. Sokolov makes no move to raise his own weapon. He just stands there, arms full of stolen supplies, waiting for the bullet or the impossible. The German's eyes travel from Sokolov's face to the supplies, to the skeletal old woman, to Volkov, whose ribs show through his torn tunic like anatomical illustrations. Something moves behind the German soldier's eyes. Recognition, maybe, or just exhaustion with the machinery of killing. His rifle slowly lowers. He looks back toward his officers, who are still dealing with the mine damage, still haven't noticed the theft in progress. Then the German does something that violates every regulation, every order, every principle of military conduct. He picks up another package of rations and holds it out toward Sokolov. When Sokolov hesitates, because surely this is a trap, surely this is some kind of trick, the German thrusts the package forward more urgently, his eyes saying what his voice cannot: take it and run before someone sees. Sokolov takes the package. Their eyes meet for one frozen second, not as enemies, not as soldiers, just as two human beings acknowledging that humanity persists, even here, even now, even in the heart of mechanized hatred. Then a German sergeant starts shouting, and the moment shatters like everything else in this city. Sokolov runs, supplies clutched against his chest, Volkov and the old woman behind him, bullets cracking through the air, but missing, always missing by the margin of miracles or luck or whatever force occasionally intervenes in slaughter. They reach the road of life as darkness transforms the frozen lake into something from mythology. A highway between worlds, a passage between life and death made of ice that might shatter at any moment. The evacuation convoy is loading final civilians, mostly children, mostly orphans, all of them looking like they've already died and just haven't stopped moving yet. Trucks race across ice that groans under their weight, pursued by German artillery that turns the frozen surface into geysers of water and shattered ice. The civilians they've carried this far finally speaks, her voice like wind through cemetery stones. She pushes the packages back toward Sokolov, shaking her head with absolute conviction. She knows she won't make it to the other side. Her eyes say it clearly. And these supplies should go to soldiers who can still fight, to people who have actual futures. Sokolov refuses, pushing them back into her skeletal hands. She's survived this long. Survival itself is resistance, is victory, is the only revenge available against a siege designed to transform human beings into statistics. But then the sky opens with the scream of Junkers 88 bombers diving through darkness, their engines adding mechanical hatred to gravity's pull. Bombs fall like steel rain, each impact turning ice into fountain and lake surface into spiderweb cracks. One truck vanishes through the ice as if it never existed. There and then gone, swallowed by black water that will preserve the bodies until spring. Another explodes in flames so bright they illuminate the entire apocalyptic landscape. Burning truck, running people, the city skyline reduced to jagged teeth against the night sky. Civilians scatter across the ice in every direction, which is every wrong direction because panic doesn't understand physics, doesn't know that the ice is fracturing now, spreading lightning bolt cracks that race faster than human beings can run. Sokolov grabs the old woman and sprints toward the convoy's rear, where a single truck is still operational, its driver desperately attempting a turn that might tear the ice apart by itself. Volkov is ahead, then beside, then behind. They're moving as a unit without words because words require breath they cannot spare. A bomb impacts 30 meters away, and the shockwave is a physical hand that slaps them down onto ice that groans with sounds like a planet dying. The impact drives the air from Sokolov's lungs, fills his vision with stars that have nothing to do with the night sky. Then he feels it through his entire body. The ice beneath him is cracking. Not the distant sound of someone else's danger, but the immediate sensation of solid becoming liquid, of the surface that's supposed to hold, breaking into pieces under his weight. He throws the old woman toward Volkov, toward the truck that's somehow still moving, and she lands on the running board with a thud that must hurt, but she makes no sound. The ice where Sokolov lies is tilting now, sliding downward toward water that kills through cold before drowning can even begin. He scrambles for purchase on surface that's suddenly angled at 30 degrees and accelerating toward vertical. Black water erupts through widening cracks and fountains that freeze as they fall, creating sculptures of death in real time. Volkov's hand shoots out and locks around Sokolov's wrist with grip strength that shouldn't exist in a body that's been starving for months. For a moment, they're suspended in impossible balance. Volkov halfway onto the truck, Sokolov sliding into the abyss, the old woman between them as counterweight. The ice continues its terrible mathematics, calculating stress and mass and the precise moment when physics wins over desperation. Then more hands join Volkov's, soldiers from the truck, civilians, strangers whose names Sokolov will never learn and whose faces he cannot see in the darkness. They pull together in one synchronized heave that's part physics and part prayer. Sokolov rises from the edge of death, hauled onto the truck bed as the ice behind him finally surrenders to inevitability and plunges into Lake Ladoga, taking half a city block's worth of frozen surface with it.
The truck accelerates across ice that spiderwebs with cracks beneath the tires, but somehow, impossibly, miraculously, holds. They race toward the eastern shore through darkness that offers no promises except the possibility of not dying in the next 30 seconds. Behind them, the bombing continues its work of turning ice into chaos. Ahead, the shore remains invisible, existing only as desperate faith that solid ground still exists somewhere in this frozen nightmare. They make it across just as dawn breaks, pale and cold and utterly indifferent to whether humans live or die. The truck skids to a stop at the supply station, and people pour off like water from a cracked vessel. Wounded, frozen, traumatized, but maintaining that most fundamental quality, alive. Sokolov and Volkov climb down last, helping the old woman between them. She weighs nothing. She weighs the entire world. The supply officer takes their names, their unit designation, issues new ration cards with the bureaucratic efficiency that persists even in apocalypse. Then he does something unexpected. He straightens and delivers a full, formal salute. Not casual acknowledgement, but absolute respect. Because everyone here knows the cost of crossing that frozen road, understands the price of choosing survival over surrender. Sokolov turns and looks back across Lake Ladoga as morning sun touches the ice with light that makes it almost beautiful, almost peaceful, almost anything except what it actually is, a highway of death that people cross anyway because the alternative is accepting that the siege has already won. Somewhere beyond that frozen expanse, Leningrad still burns and starves and fights. The suffering hasn't ended. The dying continues. But they've carried one old woman across death's highway, and in a war that measures lives in numbers too astronomical to comprehend, that single survival somehow equals victory. Volkov unwraps one of the packages they stole from the German convoy. Actual bread, actual butter, substances that belong to memory more than reality. He breaks it into 3 equal portions with the precision of someone performing a sacred ritual. One for him, one for Sokolov, one for the old woman. They eat slowly, reverently, each bite a communion with the idea that tomorrow might exist. The old woman speaks again, stronger now, asking their names. When they tell her, she nods and produces something from inside her coat. A photograph, creased and worn from being held by hands that never stop trembling. A young man in uniform stares out from the image, full-faced and healthy in a way that seems fictional now. Her grandson, she explains. He died in September, in the first month of siege. He was a soldier. He was brave. And now these two soldiers, these strangers, have given her the chance to carry his memory out of this dying city, to ensure that his life meant something beyond becoming another statistic in a siege that will kill more people than any single battle in human history. She reaches out with hands like bird bones and touches each of their faces. A gesture beyond language, beyond nation, beyond the machinery of war that's tried so hard to destroy the idea that individual humans matter. Her fingertips are ice cold, but the meaning is warm. Is everything that survives when everything else has been stripped away. Then she turns and walks toward the evacuation center, toward trucks heading east, toward whatever life exists beyond the siege. Her steps are small and uncertain, but they're moving forward, which in this place is the same thing as victory. Sokolov and Volkov stand in the pale morning light watching her go. Around them, the supply depot churns with desperate activity. Ammunition being loaded for the return trip across the ice. Medical supplies, food rations, every package marked for delivery into hell. Their unit is somewhere back across that frozen lake, still holding defensive positions, still fighting against German forces that surround the city in an iron ring. Which means soon, perhaps today, perhaps tomorrow, they'll have to cross back, return to the siege, step once more into that frozen nightmare where survival is measured in grams of bread and degrees below zero. But for this moment, for these few minutes while dawn light touches frost and transforms it into something briefly beautiful, they're here on solid ground. They're breathing air that doesn't taste of smoke and death. They've saved one life in a war that devours millions. And somehow, in the impossible mathematics of survival that govern this place, that single equation balances in a way that makes the next breath worth taking. Volkov hands Sokolov the last piece of bread. Sokolov breaks it again, gives half back. They eat together as the sun rises over Lake Ladoga, two soldiers sharing the most valuable currency in Leningrad. One more day of life. One more choice to survive. One more refusal to let the siege win. The bread tastes like hope. It tastes like defiance. It tastes like the thing that keeps humans human, even when everything around them is designed to transform them into corpses or statistics or cautionary tales about the price of resistance. They finish eating as the supply officer approaches with new orders. Their unit needs them back across the ice by nightfall. The siege continues. The war continues. The dying continues. But so does the living, the fighting, the stubborn refusal to accept that this frozen hell is all that remains of tomorrow. Sokolov shoulders his rifle and turns toward the lake. Volkov falls in beside him. Together, they walk toward the road of life, toward the return journey, toward whatever comes next in a siege that has already lasted too long and will last months longer still. Behind them, the old woman reaches the evacuation trucks and climbs aboard with help from younger hands. Ahead, the frozen lake waits with its ancient patience, ready to test them again, ready to kill them or let them pass according to calculations that have nothing to do with deserving or justice or any human concept of fairness. But they've learned the fundamental lesson of Leningrad. Survival is not about deserving. It's not about justice. It's about placing one foot in front of the other, about dividing the last piece of bread, about pulling strangers from cracking ice, about believing that the shore exists even when you cannot see it. They step onto the ice as the sun climbs higher. Two soldiers walking back into hell because that's where their unit is, where their duty lies, where the war still rages. The ice holds beneath their boots. The city burns in the distance, and somewhere in the mathematics of this siege, 2 more lives continue their defiant equation with death, refusing to solve for 0, insisting that tomorrow is still worth fighting for. One more day, one more choice, one more small victory against the machinery of annihilation. That's how you survive the deadliest siege in human history. That's how you carry hope across frozen highways. That's how you remain human in a place designed to make humanity itself an impossible luxury. They walk on, toward Leningrad, toward survival, toward whatever comes next in a war where simply living through the night equals heroism, and dividing bread equals love, and refusing to die equals the greatest victory available.